I'm with the student competition team from California State University, Fresno. They participated in the NSPS 2018 competition. They're here with their map that they created from their fieldwork. I'd like to begin by asking them to introduce themselves.
Jim Higgins.
Victor Osgato.
Yulisa Miguel.
Hunter Eldridge.
Justin Penley.
Julianne Warmerdam.
So, this was an interesting project, wasn't it? Okay, so at what stage did you think maybe we shouldn't have signed up for this? Was there a time that happened?
Not at all.
No agreement, no.
So, no? From you?
Maybe before it happened. But it turned out great.
So I know that certainly in your school classes, college classes, you probably didn't do a project that was quite like this. Some of you may have had to do some kind of retracement work with a compass, perhaps if you had a professional job that involved that. But when you came onto the site, first time with all the last-minute instructions you got Sunday morning, what happened? Did you have to rethink anything at all that you did?
We basically had to create a plan at that point. And that's not necessarily something the less experienced people are used to. We're learning the equipment still. We're not creating an entire plan. So that was a big learning curve for us.
And how did you prepare before you came here? You had some very basic information about how you would be doing this and with what you would be doing it. So what kind of preparation did you do before you actually came onto the site?
We looked at some of the equipment that was being given and just sat down and thought, okay, well, what could they have us do? And we went out and spent a couple weekends practicing those drills.
And in terms of what you practiced with, equipment-wise or process-wise, can you give me an example of one of the things you did?
Yeah, well, one of them was using the steel tape and using the holders. That was pretty interesting, and learning how to actually use the steel tape and read it correctly.
Did you practice with a compass of any kind?
Oh no, I haven't used the compass. I barely learned as soon as we started.
Did anybody here on the team use a compass?
Yeah, we did have a day where we went over the compasses. We were learning how to set declinations and all of that, which we had never done before.
And since you're all surveying students, I'm assuming you all learned how to operate at automatic level. Okay. So, Yulia, if you wouldn't mind, point to the center of your track there. What did you guys do first? What was the first thing you did when you got to the site?
Oh, so what we did was we set up our tripod over the center point, and we mounted the compass on it, so that way we would know exactly where the center point's at, and then we used the plumb bob so we could get measurements from the center point to wherever we had to measure.
And so which direction did you measure and how far?
So the bearing we were given was north 10 degrees west, and we went up 104 feet, .36, which is a half of the square acre, to get our midpoint, our north midpoint, to establish our basis of bearings.
So can you show me on the map where that point is then?
This is our center point, and this would be our basis of bearings to our north midpoint.
Okay, very good. So once that was done, what was your next process?
Well, our next step was to establish the corners. So we set our bases of bearing. We did the north line and the south line, and then we started going after the corners.
So you went out radially from the center? Is that what you did?
We went out radially from the center, diagonally, and we also went from the north midpoint across.
And were you doing any kind of check system to make sure that your corners were where they were supposed to be and that you were getting a square shape?
Yeah, we were double checking our measurements as we were making them back and forth, and then we would use the compass to check the angle.
And were you able through some method, because most students looking at what you had to do would say, there's no way to calculate an error of closure on this thing. So did you guys come up with an idea of how to calculate that?
Yeah, at the end when we had a few minutes left towards the end, we measured all the legs all the way around to where so we could see what our misclosure was, and then we were able to put that into a bundle adjustment.
So, did you set up a grid for the topography?
No, we did not.
So if you didn't set up a grid, how did you methodically set out to topo the area?
So we chose strong features to get the topo, and we just went from there.
Okay, so when you chose these features, I'm assuming you walked out there with a level rod, somebody took a reading on it. But how did you know where that was, how to plot that on your map?
So we used our control points and secondary control points that we set and used those as tie points. So we measured distances from 2 close points, and we drew circles on AutoCAD and found the intersection point, and that would be our horizontal location.
Okay, so the secondary control didn't come out. So tell me how you set up the secondary control points.
So we set them up in a circle around our point. So we were basically just trying to get an establishment of control, more control, so it'd be easier to tie in our topographic points to get those horizontal positions. And I believe that's why we set it up. We were restricted on time, so we actually used the secondary control points for our topography. And so they were unable to be used for their initial reasoning, but we were able to use them.
And was the secondary control point location kind of arbitrarily determined, or did you have some method to your madness?
It was spread across kind of evenly, so we could cover a good area within our parcel.
Yeah, that's an interesting approach. From what I remember from all the presentations today, nobody did it quite this way. I think everybody else created a grid. Did you consider a grid?
We were originally considering a grid until we got out there and saw all the undulations. And we said, well, that's what the key features that we need to get. The grid ain't going to do it for us, so adapt and overcome.
So in terms of this entire project, do you feel like you learned something about surveying service and how it might be carried out if you ever get called upon to do a project like this in the future?
Yeah, definitely. So basically we learned that don't expect anything. You may have to use things that you've never used before, and you may not use things you were planning to use. So basically be creative with whatever you get.
How about you?
I think one of the groups earlier said that surveying is an art, and I believe that that's what we were determined to go out there and do. We were trying to make an art to get the most data that we could.
Another thing is we don't know what the environment's going to be like and what the ground is going to look like until we actually get there. So that was a struggle as well, and could be in a third world country.
I just learned a lot from this project. I don't have any experience in the field work, or I haven't had an internship, so it was nice being able to just ask questions from, because they're experts at certain areas, so I just learned a lot. I appreciate it.
I wouldn't say it's experts quite yet, but no, it was a great experience, great team building exercise. Honestly, never worked with them on projects except for Jim here, but it was a great experience for all of us. And hopefully what we take away from this is that land surveying is also always being progressed. 100 years ago, they'd use different methodology. From now, in 100 years, what will that methodology be? What technology will we be using in order to do mapping? I look forward to that.
I would say that it's nice to be able to go back and look at our forefathers that we're trying to follow in the steps of. If I got to do a survey and follow in that gentleman's steps, I need to be able to use the methodology that he used at that time. So it's good to get these refreshers and go back to the basics sometimes, and it reinforces, even when we're using the newer equipment, how it's getting the functionality it is.
Well, that wraps it up. Thank you for spending the time with us, and good luck with the competition results.
Thank you.